Hey everybody, we are here getting ready to go live. Jonny Roman is joining me in just a moment. So just stay tuned with me. You're coming on live. I want to see if you're here. So if you can comment, that will help me to know that in fact we are here. So there's Jonny Roman.
Here I am.
Can you, oh, you know what? I wonder, Jonny, if what's happening is when we're at this distance, something happens to the headset.
I don't. Can you not hear me anymore?
I can hear you, but I'm not hearing you in my ears.
Oh, I don't. It should make it.
Oh, we know Diana's here. Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine.
Okay, as long as you hear me just fine, we're just going to trust that it's all going to work.
We already got a like, so I think we're good.
Okay, I'm not touching anything, people. Well, actually, I'm going to touch one thing, but it's good to see you all, I think, and we are here going live with you. So it is almost 12:30, or exactly 12:30, and we are here to do our first Olympic gold medal Facebook Live. You know, Jonny, just so everybody knows, my name is Freyer-Jones. In case you're confused, I'm Freyer-Jones. This is Jonny Roman. Oh, look, he has his Olympic
torch. My torch. Here we go. Let the games begin.
That's right. That's right. Let the game. Ba, 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 ba. Here we are coming to you live, just like the Olympic Games. We won't be doing any track and field, but we will be doing lots of work. We're going to do lots of work. So first of all, for all of you that come, or you're watching the video, we want to thank you for coming. We think it's great that you're here, because just putting the time in with this recording or live with us, because we're going to take live questions, it's going to be awesome. It really means that you're like, okay, I want to relate to my work just the way a professional athlete does. And professional athletes put in the work every day. You know, if any of you are watching the Olympics, we know, we're hearing every single day about the amount of work these people put in. Every single day they're putting in work for just a couple moments, just to get to that win, that potential win. We're lucky in our profession. I want to create context for us today. We're lucky. We can put in work, and we don't only have to deal with the Olympics. I'm being told by my stage manager. What am I being told?
Switch yours.
Oh, to switch the actual pods?
Yeah, change yours because the pods are on.
My stage manager husband, who works in live television quite a lot, is telling me to switch my ears, and that's why they'll fall out less. So that's good news. That's what I would like. So here we go. So we want to talk with you today about what is the next medal in your business. What's the next medal in your business? So to give you some background on me, I've been a professional coach for over 18 years now, and I earned my first medal. I consider my first medal like my first paid client, right? Like there were other, let's call them medals, just starting to coach pro bono. Like those are all good things. For me personally, I relate to my first medal as my first paid client. And I asked Jonny in preparation for today to share a little bit about, like, when he looks back on the beginning of his business, what does he consider? What do you consider your first medal, Jonny? Like what would you, how do you relate to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many that I could pick from, and when I thought about bronze, silver, gold, when I first raised, the first time I went from, I think I was, for 6 months I was charging, I think, $2,700, and I raised it to $3,000 and got a client. It was like, that was like, for me, my bronze medal. That was really exciting for me, right? I didn't know anything about what I could do, what I could charge, or anything like that. So just add a like, yeah, change it a little bit. And
Great. So we want to hear from you. I know there are some comments happening. So Jonny, fill me in. What are we hearing in the comments?
Just people saying hi. They can hear us. We're good so far.
Okay. I want to hear from some people, like, either where are you now? Like, are you in pursuit of a medal? And if you're not, we want you to be. And then we want to establish what is your medal going to be, right? Because some of you may be here and already have your first paid clients. You may be well beyond that, and that's great. I mean, Johnny's in a place in his business where many coaches would perceive that Johnny has already achieved gold. Now, he may not see it that way, but I certainly do in terms of the level of practice that he has. So you can determine what your next medal is. It could be, I need to have 5 clients, or I need to have 10 clients. Your next medal could be, I want to hit 50K of income, or I want to hit 25K of income. Your next medal could be, gold could be you are going over the 100K mark or going over the 200K mark. So we want to hear in comments, like, what's your next medal going to be? Tell us a little bit so that we can best help you, which is, you know, Johnny and I always laugh about these Facebook Lives. Like, I love doing them. And as I've shared, it's a little bit like the Wild Wild West, because we're coaching you in your comments. We never know what the videos, like, we have to practice beforehand because my video ends up looking all weird. And just like the Olympic Games, right? Like, someone falls. I'm so grateful that, like, I'm not an Olympic athlete and gold is not on the line every time I do a Facebook Live, because I find the Facebook Lives to take enough work and enough emotional effort to prepare that I'm so grateful I'm not an Olympic athlete. What I do think I would win gold at, though, just want to make sure everyone sees, I would win Olympic gold as a Starbucks competitor. Just saying.
That's awesome. So we've got a couple people. So Geeta is saying close 5 Vision Day clients. And Jan is saying that it's twofold. Personally, to be a more professional coach, and that would make her more comfortable in raising her fees. So those would be her medal for her.
I love that. All right, let's go. It's Jan, the one who says she wants to be more professional, and then we'll go to the next one. So first of all, Jan, congratulations, right? Like, I can probably count on my hand how many times I've heard a coach acknowledge, like, that getting more professional is their opportunity, right? Getting more professional. And I love that, right? Because this is a profession. Being a professional coach and demonstrating professionalism is one of the greatest ways that we can help people feel safe and feel confident in us, right? I always joke with coaches in the school, nobody gets excited or, like, feels good about hiring someone who seems nervous and tentative and doesn't seem to have their professional act together. So Jan, I'm going to ask you a question that I want you to answer in the comments. What do you think is missing in your professionalism? Is it like a confidence, how you present yourself and languaging thing? Or is it, do I know how to start an enrollment conversation? Or where do you feel like your professionalism gets a little bumpy or wonky? And while you're answering that, Johnny, will you repeat the first one? The person who said they want, what's their next medal? Was it 5?
5 Vision Day clients.
Vision Day.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to take that to mean like a full day, like a full, like a, and tell us if we're wrong, right? Like, is that like a 1-day intensive with people? What is a 5, like, Vision Day? What does that mean? And do you have any now? So if you want 5, are you at 0? Or where are you at in that numbers game? And then anyone else who's joining, like, what's the next medal? Johnny, I know you want to answer me.
Yeah, well, she said yes. So yes, that, and she hasn't responded yet as whether she has any, unless that's with the yes.
Okay.
We have
so,
a few.
All right. So I want to talk about the context of going for your next medal, right? So, you know, if we're going to relate this to the profession of coaching, and we're going to use the metaphor of Olympic athletes and going for medals, we cannot take out of the conversation the level of consistency and practice that these people put in, right? Like, I just saw a clip of Simone Biles. Somebody was like, well, you know, tell us about what your life is like when you're preparing. It's like 7 to 8 hours a day of practice, 7 to 8 hours days of practice and training 6 days a week. And they take a break for lunch and they take a break for dinner and then they go back. So we want to ask ourselves, what would that look like in the context of my day? Like, how much am I sitting down and training? Meaning connecting, nurturing, serving, and how much am I doing it over and over again, knowing that there will be people that I never end up getting as paid clients. Somebody, I think it was, I don't know where we were, Jonny. I feel like maybe the last month of the school. Oh, we were talking, one of the coaches in the school was saying, and this is true, most people are not going to hire us. Most people that we talk to, right? Most people that we have conversations with, they're not going to hire us. Now, we don't need most people to hire us. All of us want, what, 10 to 12 clients, or maybe 16 to 18. So we want to be in the game of serving, nurturing, connecting, making a difference, knowing full well the bulk of people I do that with will not become paid clients, and I'm 100% okay with that. Jonny, what do we got? Is anyone, or are we hearing more about meddling?
Yeah, well, he said it's a one-day intensive, hopefully a long-term engagement. So she's taken 3 clients through Vision Day. A fantastic deep dive from the start. That's a great start to longer engagement. So 3 people she's taken have led to raving reviews, and all 3 are still clients.
Beautiful.
She wanted.
So this is for everybody. I love the idea of like 5 is my next medal, right? 5 is my next medal. One of the things you want to think about in this context is, am I expanding my pool, right? Because if I want 5 clients, chances are I'm going to talk to a good amount of people before those next 2 or 3 come along. You know, we talk about this a lot in the school, like you want to be having roughly 8 enrollment conversations a week. 8 to 10. Some people have 15. If I'm going to create 8 to 10 to 15 coaching conversations on my calendar, I need to be doing a lot of connecting and a lot of serving to get to that place where someone wants to have a conversation with me. So I have to do a lot of pre-work before an actual enrollment conversation ends up on my calendar. And if I want 8 to 15 a week, because that's for a full-time coach, right? Who's like, I want a full-time practice. That means I need to be doing a lot of connecting and serving wherever I go. And Jonny, would you be willing to talk about how that has worked in your world as you've grown as a coach and as your business, like those first couple of years, what that was like in terms of getting the reality of what it took to have that many conversations on your calendar?
Yeah, well, first of all, people are saying it's difficult to hear me, that I'm breaking up a bit. So if I were to hold the phone, instead of having it leaning against my computer, am I coming through clearer? That's the first question. So as I wait for that, you can hear me fine?
I can hear you fine. You
Okay.
broke up a tiny bit, but I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, the reality for me of becoming a professional coach, when the reality set in of what that really looks like and what is required of me to step into professionalism, was sobering, right? I really wanted to feel garbled. For some reason, I'm coming through garbled.
All right, I can take over, Jonny, until we
go ahead.
Test that out. Yeah. So I'm happy to. I could talk about Jonny all day long. So I will share with you my perception of Jonny and that sobering moment where the reality of what it would take to create a successful coaching practice, which I imagine for an Olympic athlete, there's also that sobering moment called, how bad do I want this? Am I willing to devote my entire life to this? Now, we're lucky. We don't have to do that, right? You know, we didn't start at the age of 4, you know, in a gym and then end up not even going to like school and having a private tutor, all in the name of achieving an Olympic medal. We don't have to do that. So right out of the gate, that should feel easier for all of us, right? We can still have lives. We can still go see friends. We can go see a movie. And the day-to-day job of a professional coach is showing up at our computer, getting out in the world, having conversations, being curious, slowing down and connecting and serving. It's like, we want to relate to it exactly the same way an athlete does when they go warm up, right? If I'm a gymnast, I'm going to have the chalk. I'm going to start to like do my warm-ups and my mobilization. It's like, we want to relate to that in terms of ourselves every single day. And getting out and connecting with people, that really, I want to talk about that a little bit more as part of our job, because a lot, and this happened in the school as well, a lot of coaches are connecting behind a computer. And it's not that we can't do that, right? I can send a beautiful email. I can start to connect that way. And having been out in the world this summer quite a bit, like physically out, there's nothing that can replace face-to-face human connection, where we're meeting people, where they're seeing our face and we're seeing theirs. I really don't want to underestimate the value of coaches getting out from behind their computer and out into the world in terms of having an impact on your practice. So if you're here and you're like, I'm going to do all the Facebook Lives, like I'm coming to everyone, Carolyn, I'm going to be on the mat, I'm going to be working out. I want each of you, whoever's going to be coming, to take on some new practices, right? Because when Simone Biles is learning a new move, she's got to take it on and build it into her routine. I want you over the next 3 weeks to go, okay, what am I willing to take on in the name of expanding my capacity? So maybe that's going to be, I'm going to go get out this week before the Facebook Live next week, and I'm going to go meet some people. I'm going to increase my connecting. I'm going to reach out to 5 more people between now and next Wednesday in the name of my medal. So I want you to think about that. And if you don't come live to the Facebook Live next week, use the video, use the recording of it, but use the momentum, right? Of like, I'm using the Olympics as inspiration. Use the Facebook Lives as momentum to get you out and get you moving in a bigger way. All of you, without even knowing some of you personally, I can promise you that there is an opportunity to increase your action and your connecting, even by 5%. Without me even knowing some of you, I can guarantee that if I were to look at your calendar, I'd be like, oh, you need to be out there more. You need to be connecting more. Because it's true of every coach I've ever connected with and served, including me, by the way. Like, it's not like I'm different. You know, if I ever go to my coach and I'm like, oh, wow, I need a client. He's like, well, what's been on your calendar? It's not rocket science for us. It really isn't. Jonny, do you want to give it a shot? Do we want to see if we can hear you and get some input from people?
Well, I can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, great. So I put in my headphones. I'm hopeful that this resolves the issues that people were having. So let me know, thumbs up in the chat,
Right.
if
Yeah.
this has resolved it, because apparently I
Let
was coming
Jonny
in
know.
very garbled.
Is it any better?
Yes. Great. Okay. Yes.
Another Olympic first. We
This
did
was
it.
my goal today. So let's see. Where did Jan, who we started with, was saying that she was the one who initially said that she wants to be a more professional coach and will make her more comfortable raising her fees. She said that in moving clients along and achieving their goals, sometimes she's too nice, she's too pleasing instead of serving, and feels that her follow-up calls need improvement. So in the context of professionalizing herself, that
Got
was
it.
her response.
Got it. So two things I want to comment on that, Dan. So thank you for sharing that. I want to say to you that you could play a game called I'm going to be 2% more willing to say what I see. So I'm going to repeat that. I'm going to be 2% more willing to say what I see to my current clients in the name of serving them, right? Because that it's not uncommon when we're newer that we can confuse like niceness with like coaching, right? And I'm not a fan, by the way. Like that does not mean I'm a fan of like let's be scary and mean in the name of serving our clients, right? Like that's not the kind of coach I am. I mean, I'm certainly willing to say what I see, and I have no interest in being scary. Like that's just not who I am. People might think I'm scary. I'm sure there are coaches who've been to the school that are like, I beg to differ, Carolyn. You are a little scary. That is never my intention, though. So let me be clear on that. And there are plenty of coaches who don't like what I tell them. And Jan, you can practice, right? That's a practice called, what am I thinking right now when I'm with someone that I'm not saying, right? What am I not saying? And that could potentially serve them, right? So I want you to take that on as a practice, and I want to comment on something because you said, I think you wrote, if I felt like this was there was more of that happening, I'd be more comfortable raising my fees. I don't know that raising one's fees is ever comfortable, right? Johnny's like, no way. Like, and I'll let
my
him.
Experience.
Right. I want Johnny to share about his experience. But like nobody's like, ooh, I'm super comfortable. I've had coaches who are like, I'm ready, and it's still a little uncomfortable to do it. It's still a little uncomfortable. So I don't want you to be in the idea that like, oh, once I handle this like strengthening of myself, I'll be comfortable. I don't think there's any move we make to get to the next medal that is inherently comfortable, right? I don't even want to buy into that word. It's not that that's not a great word for us to want to go to in our profession, right? Because serving people and saying what we see sometimes isn't comfortable, right? It flies in the face of being nice. Saying that, when someone is surprised by our fee, maybe for them it feels too much. It's not comfortable when that occurs. So I want to I want to invite everyone to consider laying down the idea for any of us that there's a comfortableness we're trying to go for. I think we want ease, and I think we want to feel good about the choices we make. Like I want to feel good about my fee, but feeling good doesn't mean I'm going to be comfortable when I have to say it the first time. It might even not mean comfortable the first 5 times I say it. Johnny, do you want to talk about that, like your own process of fees and what that's been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, talk about uncomfortable. I early on in my career when I was just getting started, I would raise my fees in what to me felt like comfortable increments. Like I would go up like $300 at a time. I think I went from 2,700 to 3,000 to 3,300 because for me that was just just enough to stretch myself that served my business and was at the edge of what I was willing to do at the time. When that was fine, it worked for me, and it still wasn't comfortable. There was still this like, can I really do that? Can I really charge that? Are people really gonna pay that? And then as my fees have increased, it's like you talked about readiness, and that was really the inner information that I needed to jump to whatever the next level was, right? Like I felt ready to go to 10,000, and I felt ready to go to 12,000 and to 15,000 and then to 20. And it's just like, it's been a progressive process, and comfortable was never the word I would place on it.
Yeah.
Ready feels more aligned with that.
Yeah. So I want to offer that. to anyone who's like looking at, and if you want some evidence, like I always think this is helpful, evidence of when it's a good time to raise one's fees. The guideline, it's a rough guideline, so it's not a rule, it's a guideline. It's like, is almost everybody saying yes to me? When I offer coaching and share my fee, is almost everybody saying yes? That can be a great guideline of, okay, I think I can raise my fees. Is everybody saying no? That can be good feedback of like, wait, let's wait. Because we want you to have some success under your belt. We want you to get a couple people at one fee before we jump to another. Now, the next thing I'm going to say is going to fly in the face of everything I just said. Some coaches just throw caution to the wind, right? And they just they practice. They're like, I'm going to say this fee and I'm going to try that. And that can be a really fine way to do stuff. Like it can be, you can run experiments. You know, I never want to be someone in this profession who's like, there's only one way to do this. There are coaches, I know a coach right now who from the outside in, you'd be saying, wow, they are starting high, man. Like I think their fee is something like $60K for 6 months. And in looking from the outside in, there could be like, wow, they've done lots of coaching, just not the kind of, they're not like a leadership coach. They're leaning more into that territory in their own work. And you could look at them and you could go, that seems bold. Maybe, is that smart? And you know what? This person has worked at it and worked at it, lots of conversations, saying his fee over and over again. And guess what? 2 people just said yes with payment plans, right? Now, something had to have occurred that they would say yes, called they felt profoundly served. They felt like time with this person made a difference for them. And this person has had between 2 and 4 conversations with every person. So this is not someone who's throwing out one conversation and trying to get people. And so it's working for him. And so I want to be a voice for, like, you get to run experiments. And there's this fine line between running experiments and ignoring coaching. I just made a post. If you're not following me on Instagram, I do a lot of stories on Instagram, and you can see them now on Facebook. But I just shared a video of a runner being interviewed. And the first thing the journalist, the reporter says to her is, I know you listen to your coach, and I know you follow the plan that you and they create together. Like, that was the start of the question. The rest of it was like, and then what? Like, how do you? And I thought, I posted it because I thought, I love the idea of, I already know you listen to your coach. And I already know that you follow the plan. So the question becomes for all of you, if you have a coach, are you listening to them? Because I see plenty of coaches who are like, yeah, I like what you said there, but I'm not going to do this other thing you said. But if you don't have a coach, do you have a plan? So Olympic athletes have plans to get to their medal. So we want to slow this down today and go, do you have a plan for getting to your medal? Or is it just like, well, I'm just going to keep talking to people, doing the same thing I'm doing? So I want to slow this down, because having a plan can be really helpful, even if it's, my plan is to go for getting up to 10 conversations a week. My plan is I'm going to go to these 3 events once a month and just start serving people. But having a plan, a framework, can really help. And, you know, to me, Jonny, I don't know if you feel like this is true for you. My perception of you was that there were times initially where you were like, I'm not so sure about the plan that Carolyn presents. Like, do I buy into her plan? But you were willing to run the experiment of the plan called getting more connections and conversations going.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not that I wouldn't say that I was not fully bought in. I think there was a lot of discomfort and fear that came up, and insecurity that really came up for me, where I was less willing to be bold or as bold as I thought the plan required or wanted me to be. And so I was a little more, we might say, tepid with my steps of the plan.
Yeah.
At times, not always, right? But
Yeah.
I think one of my systems, if you will, or strategies is I've really worked on being much more willing to say yes to things as they show up, and saying yes to plans and whatnot, no matter how uncomfortable they are. And that's been a very loose plan that has really served me in my business at the baseline, and then other times creating real intentional plans to, you know, get out there or send invitations or things like that.
Yeah. And I think there can be two levels of a plan. There can be like, okay, I need to get really intentional and get more conversations on my calendar. I need to get out and get a bigger pool of people that I'm serving. That can be a very specific plan, and I would encourage all of us to consider that. But there can be audacious plans, right? I mean, like one of the Olympic athletes, she won gold for biking. She didn't start until 2017. And the only reason she got to compete is because an athlete had to drop out. But like in the back of her mind, she was like, oh, maybe I could do this. So I invite all of us and all of you, as we spend the next couple weeks together, to have two levels of a plan. There's like the real day-to-day work, but you can have an audacious plan in there somewhere. You can play a game and be like, ooh, but that'd be my stretch plan. And little by little, you can be making deposits into that plan too. And you know, I'm a fan of practicality, right? I really want coaches to earn good livings, to be able to live their lives well. And that's why I'm all for like, the only way we do that is through serving and conversations. Like, it can feel almost boring that this is, Jonny and I are back another year, and here's what we're talking about again. And how you do it and executing on the plan to get your medal is really the difference, right? It's the difference between how someone ends up getting to the Olympics and someone doesn't, right? Barring injury and things like that. We don't really have to deal with injuries at the same way that an Olympic athlete does. Jonny, are there questions popping up? I want to make sure Yeah,
so Anita was asking, because you were talking about filling your calendar, and she said, with 15 connect calls on my calendar, in addition to clients, like 8 or 9 calls a week, where do you generate the reach out to get 15 extra calls per week? And do you keep the 15 up even when your practice is full?
Okay, great question. The answer is no. When your practice is full, you know, I'm not doing 15 conversations a week. I'm pretty sure Jonny isn't. When our practices are full, it's a whole different game. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that. The things that Jonny and I are talking about are in the name of filling your practice or getting your next 3 clients. If your practice is full, then you're in different territory. Then it's like you get to kind of watch as clients move towards completing, you know, right? You start to get better at like, oh, this person's going to be done in a month. Are they going to renew? Do I want to renew them, or do I need to fill that spot? That becomes a different game. You're a little bit more of a seasoned athlete once your practice is full. When it's not full, where does that time come from is a great question. So I'll share the way I have done it and did it in the past, and maybe Jonny can share his. You know, when I was in the game of filling my practice, right, I would easily devote, like, there would either be 2 days in my week where I spent big chunks of time connecting, reach out, going and doing something. Like, it was like there were at least 2 days a week where half days, if not more, were devoted to like creating new connections and serving. And then those would soon, depending on each person, and it's different, right? I might nurture someone and they might end up on my calendar in 2 weeks. I might nurture someone and they don't end up on my calendar for 3 months. So every person is so unique in the relationship building. And when the timing comes of like, I've nurtured this person for 4 months, something just happened for them at work, and I'm the person they think of, like, oh my gosh, I think Carolyn could help me with this. So I broke it up into like 2 days a week. I would clear the calendar, right? We have to have time dedicated to this. Now, some coaches might do it differently, and I want to hear from Jonny. Like, some people do it every day, and they're like, I'm carving out 90 minutes a day or an hour a day where I'm doing those extra reach outs. Some people are working a little bit at night. I definitely did. So it can be different for each person. How has it been for you, Jonny?
I mean, you know, for me, it was either I'm working on my business or I'm out in the world. You know, sometimes it's just me like joining programs because I love to do programs and make connections that way. Sometimes it's me looking for referrals in addition to just connections. Sometimes it's supporting my current clients, and seeing are there other ways that I can support them or possibly create referrals that way, because referrals has been a big part of my business as well. So you know, at the University of Santa Monica, there was a phrase that really ran throughout our time that talked about, you know, you are met at the point of action by the universe, God, spirit, however you want to connect with that. And I found that as long as I was staying in action, whatever that action looked like, whether that was intentionally reaching out and creating connections or invitations, or just being out in the world in whatever way that looked, that was part of my action and how I really thought about the sort of keeping the wheels turning in that way.
Yeah, that's great. Jonny, has anyone else written about like what their next medal is in their business? I want to see if anybody else has shared what their intention is to create their next medal.
Let me see. And please, if you haven't, share now. Let's see. Tom said my first 10K yearly client. Bonnie said 10 paying clients, and she's heading towards 6 right now. Kirsten said focusing back on my own business and getting up to 10 paying clients by the end of September after a year working for someone else. So those are the medals that came through.
I love it. I love those. Is that Bonnie? Is that our Bonnie, Jonny?
Bonnie.
Yeah.
Yep, our Bonnie.
6 clients, Bonnie.
Bonnie.
You already won a medal, as far as I'm concerned. You're doing it. I love the 10 client threshold as a medal, by the way, for everybody. You know, 10 clients I do think that's a milestone in a practice. And I think it's a really good one to use as a tool, as a marker, as a medal. And you know, one thing I want to say, if we're at 6 clients, like let's use Bonnie for example, like what I really want to say is you don't want to underestimate the power of momentum, right? Like you're at 6. In some ways, one of the things that's great about this business is as we keep building our business and adding clients, it's like there's a saying when you have kids, particularly babies, and sleep. Jonny knows this more now than I do because my kid is 16. Sleep is different, but sleep begets sleep. Do you know that statement, Jonny? Sleep begets sleep.
I've heard it, yeah.
Right. I relate to it as clients beget clients. Like as we, you know, right, when we start to get above 5, we can kind of turn around and go, oh wow, like I'm starting to have some practice at this, and 5 people have paid me, and now 6 people have paid me. So I want to make sure everybody knows, like Steve Chandler has talked about it in the context of invisible progress is happening. Invisible progress is happening. So to get to your 10, whoever you are, wherever you are, right? You want to be super like, okay, how did the first ones come to me? I always like to ask someone, well, where did the first 6 or 5 or 4 come from? There's data in that for you, right? It's like, did they come from some community you're in? Was it a referral? Is there someone that is inadvertently sharing about you and your work that you have not acknowledged or thanked? Like, where are these people coming from is a really important question. I remember when Steve Chandler said to me, well, where did the first 3 come from? And I was like, oh, and back then it was my first 3 clients were from the University of Santa Monica, right? Because that was a community, not only that I was a member of, but they knew me, right? They knew me in this capacity as the head of admissions and the head of marketing. So I was like a known entity to those people. So when I reached out to connect and serve, there was a connection already there by virtue of both being graduates of the university. So I invite you, if one of the things you're asking yourself is, where do I get my next client from? Like, where did you get the first ones from? Where did you get the first ones from? The other thing is, I was just talking to a coach yesterday, and they are coaching a leader inside of an organization. And they said to me, well, I hadn't thought about this. What if I offered to do like a 3-part series complimentary for their team? And I do like 3 2-hour sessions with their team complimentary. Like, what do you think about that? And I said, I think that's great. When we can offer people ways to experience us that is totally in service, that is one of the #1 ways to add more clients and to create more relationships in that context. So if I'm working with a leader that has a team, I'm not doing it right out of the gate. I want them to get some time with me and get more connected with me. But at some point, I'm going to make that kind of offer, right? I'm going to wait until they tell me something that sounds like I could help. And I'm going to be like, if it would be helpful, I'll do a 2-hour with your team on this particular subject. And I've never had anyone be like, why would you do that? They're always like, you would do that? And I said, absolutely. I would absolutely do that. So look for ways to create new places to make a difference for the people you're already serving. That can be a huge way to add people to your nurturing list, to your serving list, and it can result sometimes very quickly in like paid work.
This ties into, I think, a question that was asked. What are the best ways you found to make new connections to invite into conversations? A little different and I think related.
I think it's important though. I'm a fan, and Jonny, you can share more about this for you. I'm a fan of like for example, I just went on a big trip this summer with my husband, my daughter. We dropped her off at this program she was doing. But I like doing things I love, right? So we love to go on these trips with this company. I've written about it on Facebook and Instagram, and the company is called Backroads. And we're with these people when we do this trip, right? I love those trips because I get to meet people. I didn't put them together, the company did, right? But inevitably we get into these conversations, right, where they start asking me what I do and I ask them what they do. I'm a fan of doing things you love. So I'm not like, go out into the community and do something you hate. I don't think that creates great connections and service. I am a fan though of like, whatever you love, you're going to be happy to be there, and it will translate into how you're connecting with people. So whether that's the gym, whether that's dance classes, I actually know a coach who takes regular salsa classes because she and her husband are loving that. And she's met people there, obviously, who are also taking salsa classes. And she's had conversations with them. So don't underestimate the power of your own love, the things you love, the things you want to learn. And then I'm also a big fan, and Jonny and his wife, Elsie, who's also a coach, have done this. And I'd love it if you share, Jonny. I mean, Elsie in particular, right? She's joined leadership groups in your local community. Like, can you talk a little bit about that and what that's looked like?
Yeah, there's a group called Leadership Duluth. We live in Duluth, Minnesota, and it's through the chamber. It's run by the Chamber of Commerce. I think there are sister groups around the country that are like this, and it's a collection of, I don't remember, like 40 or so leaders from the community that come together for this program for 9 or 10 months, and learn about the local city governance, etc. So that was an example of her being out in the community, joining this group, and she has had conversations. She's that also as part of the group, they would go to different companies and hear speeches from leaders in that company. And just the other day, after she was at one of the meetings and walked up to the speaker after and was bold in her sharing that she's a coach and does leadership work, and would they be interested? And the woman who was the runner, the CEO, was like, "Oh yeah, here, why don't you connect with our one of our people tomorrow, and she'll get you set up with something." And that led to a conversation and all of that. So yeah, another example.
Yeah.
And for me, like in my yoga class, I've been going to yoga class for over a year now, and you know, I get into conversations from time to time, and I've shared that I'm a coach, and someone just came up to me the other day. It was at 6 a.m. He's like, "So are you taking on new clients now? Like I'd be interested in talking to you about coaching."
Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about, right? 6 a.m. Johnny's out there serving and enrolling.
I don't know if I'm serving and enrolling, and I'm in conversation. You know, when I'm doing something that I love, and so we never know what seeds we're planting when we're out sharing that we're a coach, and where that could lead.
Yeah. Are there any more questions popping up in the comments? Do we have anything anybody wants?
Yeah, so we've got some questions and we've got some gold medals.
Ooh, let's hear it.
Where did it go? Elsie's gold medal is making 100K this year, working 16 hours a week while being home with her babies the rest of the time. Lynn,
that's a pretty
going
cool
for 10
goal.
clients also. It's a fantastic goal. I have no doubt that she will do that.
Yep.
A question here from Ryan: as someone who's historically not had a strong professional self and has leaned heavily into pleasing in the past, what recommendations do you have when reconnecting with people who have experienced me from a much more social identity and haven't yet experienced me as a coach?
That's a great question, Ryan. So I would say to you, you're going to need to be super thoughtful, because when we've had more social relationships and people have known us more socially and think of us as a more social person, there's this process. It's like a process. It's not an event, right? We don't go from being, you know, Mr. Social to like Mr. Uber professional, right? We don't want to do that, because people will be like, what happened to him? That seems a little odd. Like he's so different. We want to be gentle in that process, right? We want it to be like, okay, if I'm going to reach out and connect, I still want to be, I don't want them to be like, this person's unrecognizable. Why do they sound like a robot now? So I'll give you an example, Ryan. So there's a coach that did this school a number of years ago, and he used to run a business before he became a coach. Very social guy. Like his way of writing to people is like, hey, Johnny, right? Very, hey, how's it going? And I didn't, in my coaching of him, I didn't want to like, we didn't want to make him into Mr. Corporate, right? That's not who he is. So he had to be very thoughtful that he was still warm and social, but he would just like by 2% start to, if only inside of himself, relate to them as someone that they could help. So he might write to them and be like, hey, it's been a long time. You know, we haven't talked in a bit. How are things going for you? And then they would write back and they'd be like, oh my gosh, great to hear from you. I'm doing this, this, and this. What are you doing? And this is important, Ryan. Like, you want to only spend a moment on you. Like, oh, I'm coaching now. I'm a professional coach. And you want to go right back to them. And you could create Zoom coffees all day long. So this coach would do 20-minute calls with people and reconnect and just start to be more curious than they've been in the past and start to ask questions. And slowly but surely, people, like, they noticed that he was being different, but it wasn't so radically different that it occurred as strange or weird, right? It was like, oh wow, like this person's up to something now. So it's a gentle process. And you want to be thoughtful about it, because you do need to make that conversion from someone who's Mr. Social Self to being like, I'm a professional coach now. Like, you can take me seriously in this role. Because if someone's going to coach with you, right, they really have to believe that you can help them. So we can't stay in our social selves. We have to make that step into 2% more professional, 5% more professional, little bits, while still maintaining your own warmth of who you are. So Ryan, let us know if that's helpful for you, right? And it's very specific. As you're responding, I want to say, the way that we do that is in our language. So some of this is like, if you're emailing people, you got to really either have someone be looking at it, even a fellow coach, if you don't have a coach, who's like, this sounds super social. Like, it feels a little still on the unprofessional side. Like, you want someone to be looking at your communications to give you some guidance, to go, oh, this is sort of a nice tone. It's not too formal and it still sounds like you, but I can tell you're a little different. We want that kind of to start to get injected. And you want to start reaching out to people. And it's okay if it's messy at first, right? Like, it may feel weird, it may feel awkward, and you're like, I want to do this, right? To make that conversion occur, we have to start where we are. So let us know if that's helpful. Any other questions in there, Jonny? Or anything you want to share about that?
Yeah, one of the, when I started working with a coach a number of years ago, and he was looking at my communication, he was like, it sounds kind of weird. Like, you sound kind of weird, like overly, like almost overly professional in a way. I was trying too hard to sound a certain way, and what was so helpful was to have that put back in my face, and to remember that the best communication is the most natural communication, where I'm coming through, where me is still there, just slightly more cleaner and less like, hey buddy, like, what's going on? You know, like putting that to the side and still being very natural, and whatever, however that that can come out, that sounds the most like you, is really what we're going for.
Yeah.
That's when people are going to feel your warmth and things like that, and not be like, what's going on with Jonny? Why is he sounding like this?
Right, right. And I think for the coach, like for you, Jonny, when we make those kinds of changes, right? When we make those kinds of changes, even tweaks, it can feel strange to us. Like, we sometimes overcorrect, is what I hear you saying. It was like an overcorrection. And the coach pulled you back a little bit and was like, no, this feels a little too much. So that's the power of a good coach, right? You want someone who can, it reminds me of a coach who is in the school. She's coming back for her 3rd year, but her background was uber professional and formal, like super. So when she first started to communicate as a coach, I would like go, this feels like super formal. We gotta like relax it a little. Like, it feels too, like, not that it was robotic, but it had this formality to it. So, you know, what Jonny and I are talking about it could seem small, but look, the truth is we communicate all the time as coaches, right? Connecting, serving, and our communications really matter. They really are the difference that makes a difference. Like, when I get an email from someone and it feels warm and inviting versus like robotic and overly formal, that's the difference between me responding and not sometimes, right? You know, this is where many coaches are challenged, right? Like, the moment someone feels like we want something, that's where we're not going to get a response. Like, the moment someone on the receiving end of my communication feels like I'm the one who wants something, that is the game, that is the deal breaker for people. And that's a very, that can feel kind of, when we're starting, we're blind to it. It can be a huge blind spot that we occur as if it's all about us. So let's relate it back. Is everything okay for you, Jonny? I saw you doing something with your earbuds.
Yeah, they were saying that I was echoing again, so I tried to reset it. I'm hopeful that I'm coming through clearer now. So let me know in the
Okay.
comments if that is.
Okay. So, you know, one of the things I think that we can take a play from Olympic athletes' playbooks, right? It's like each of them has a particular sport that they're excelling at, right? If those of you that have watched the Olympics, the internet went insane for this pommel horse guy, Steve. I forget how to say his last name, but he's amazing, right? Like, he's so fun. But here's what's interesting about him that I think we can all use. So he is very focused, right? Like, there are clips of him like practicing, like with his eyes shut, like moving around, but he's super playful, right? Like, there's a video of him hopping through the Olympic rings on the floor of the gym. Like, he's just hopping. And there was a clip of his parents talking about him, and they were like, people thought he was practicing there. He wasn't. He just was being himself. Like, he's kind of a, you know, playful, quirky guy. So even in his incredible focus, he is very much himself, right? We're not like, he's the guy doing Rubik's Cubes and putting his score on Instagram like 20 minutes before he's going live on his own pommel horse routine. And, you know, I so appreciate that. That's one of the things I love about this profession is as we're learning how to communicate, we can learn to be professionals, we can be really good at it, and we can still be ourselves. You can find your own tone and your own voice. And that requires practice, having someone look at your communications like Jonny had, who was like, this feels weird. This feels too much. And having someone who can help you pull it back, or, no, wow, you need to really turn up the volume on your professionalism. This feels way too social and way too much about you. So I want to make sure, right, because this is all about you earning your next medal. You could have a next medal of, I want to practice while the Facebook Lives are happening, my communication skills with clients. That could be a medal where it's like, for those of you at the beginning of the call, we're like, I need to increase my professionalism. That is a place to practice that. All your communications to current clients, potential clients, and anybody you're talking to. Anybody you're talking to. Jonny, what else are we hearing? Let's open it up. You got questions, you got somebody you're trying to enroll and you're like, it's feeling messy. Let's just, for the last half hour, 25 minutes, we want to serve you. So tell us what you've got. Tell us what's going on.
We've got some questions. Rossi is asking, what would you say is your secret sauce to start building a community of, well, he says a community of men and just a community in general to engage with the work I do, which is around emotional wellness for men?
So Jonny, we know, I'm going to let you take this one and I'll respond after, because you've done some men's work.
I haven't built communities of men, and I started running a men's retreat to Peru right before the pandemic hit, which I had to put the brakes on because of the pandemic. And really, you know, from Rossi, from my perspective, it's whether it's a community of men or anyone, it's about like, where do you want to go? Like, who are the men that are out in the world, or the groups that you want to connect with, and how can you be that kind of man out in the world as you're engaging with and connecting with other men? So there are men's groups that you could join. As an example, I've joined a dad's group here in town where I live. That's an example. And sometimes, like, I'll inject my sort of way of thinking around emotional wellness at times in the conversation, and just as a way of connecting. Now, that's just an example of things that you can do. So it's really, like Carolyn was talking about, find something that you enjoy doing, somewhere that you want to be, and then engaging with and connecting with men or whoever it is that you want to work with.
Yeah.
I mean, would you say anything different in terms of that kind of approach?
No, I think that's really important. I will say to you, is it Russ, John? Jonny, is it Russ?
Rossi.
So Rossi, you know, when I started as a professional coach, I had a business partner. She has since passed away, but we created these coaching groups for women, right? And the way we built that community was really like one person at a time. Like we started doing complimentary events at my business partner's house. Her name was Michelle. And and first we didn't have very many people. You know, as Jonny was sharing your question, I kept thinking about Steve Chandler, who like started giving talks in a library and like one person would come and then two people and then more. I mean, really, that's how communities are built. It can feel a little daunting because most of us want a community prepackaged. We want, hey, I want my 50 men or my 30 men, right? But that's not really how it works. It really works through one connection and one conversation at a time. When Michelle and I started doing those groups, Michelle in particular had a lot of women in her life that she had always wanted to serve. I mean, Michelle was just chomping at the bit to do groups and to do groups for women. And so, you know, she was a lawyer before she became a coach. So she knew lots of female lawyers, right? So she just was like, I'm going to start reaching out to the female lawyers that I know, that I love, and start like connecting with them and telling them about what I'm up to. You know, I don't want to diminish the impact of one person at a time. That's really how how our businesses are built. You know, we often are like, I want more clients. And Steve Chandler would always be like, let's start with one. Let's start with your next one. And the same thing is true, Rossi, for communities. You know, communities start small and we want to make that okay. We want to be like, yeah, I have 3 guys right now that I know well enough that I could reach out to and serve. That's great. 1 is great. You know, we start teeny baby steps. And the thing that gets in coaches' ways is their own ego in this front. Like, oh, but I want more. And I feel, you know, Steve Chandler, can you imagine how much he had to put his ego aside when one person showed up for a talk in the library? Like, to me, that is a really important story that often gets overlooked because it's so uncomfortable. We're like, oh God, could you imagine being that coach with one person sitting in your library conference room with chairs for 20? Like, what that was like for him? But he didn't care. He was like, I'm just going to serve this person. And he sat down right across from them. And, you know, back when he was starting, you know, and I love this part of his story, Rossi, I think it's valuable. He was so uncomfortable with the idea of like, I could coach someone. All his talks were like an inquiry into leadership. You could do an inquiry into what it means to be a man today. Because when we do an inquiry, it takes the pressure off us of like supposedly having answers. So all of us can use that, right? It's like an inquiry into. And go ahead.
Another idea, I know a number of coaches hold book clubs.
Yeah.
Where you could, Rossi, you could get a book that speaks to men's wellness or mental health or things like that, or emotional wellness, and invite people into that kind of a group conversation, whether paid or complimentary, just as a way where you don't have to be the expert. You can just facilitate whatever is being talked about in the book. I know a lot of coaches in the school have gotten a lot of success out of that and traction.
Yeah, I think thank you for remembering that, Jonny. And that's for all of you, by the way. Like Rossi's asking about men's groups. We have so many coaches who've taken books they've loved and created like coaching groups around the book. And they've enrolled people into it and people have paid for the group. And it is such a great way to ease into being a facilitator of a group when you have the book to rely on, right? Because the book is the source of conversation. The book is the source of great questions. So it can be a perfect way to start to gain confidence in that arena. So that's a fantastic idea, Jonny. And if I were starting over again, Like if I was going back to the beginning and if Michelle was around, I have no doubt, like if someone had given us that idea, Michelle would have been all over the book group idea, right? Because what I love about it also is it eliminates this idea that I have to come up with content. Because we don't. There's amazing content out there that we can utilize all day long. So you don't have to feel pressure that you need to come up with stuff from scratch, because you don't. None of us do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got another question here from Anita. In what ways do you use social media to effectively create connections?
So this is a great conversation to have. And some of you, I'm guessing, utilize social media and some don't at all. And maybe some of you are thinking about it. And, you know, I always say this. So for those of you that have heard me say it before, I apologize if it feels repetitive and boring, but it's really not. You don't need to use social media. You can, and it's not a requirement. You know, social media, I think, is often used poorly by most coaches, because most social media, right, by virtue of it, is like, look at me, look at where I am, look at what I'm doing in my life, right? And it's not that that's wrong, it's not that, but as professional coaches, if our job is to serve and connect, and the intention is to not have it be about me, then I need to come up with, what am I sharing and why am I sharing? Why? I think it's a really important question, and coaches will be like, you said to never ask why. I think we can ask ourselves that at times. Like, what's my intention here in sharing this right now on social media? And I think an important question is, will this serve people? Will me sharing about me being up to this cool thing, will this serve? I'm not saying it won't, it might. But I think social media, if it's going to be used to serve people, it has to be, again, thoughtful. It has to be like, would I get value from seeing this? Right? So we have someone, she did her 3rd year of the school last year. She's coming back to the school in a very new capacity as adjunct faculty. Her name is Lisa Husseini. Lots of people on the Facebook Live know her because they were either in the school with her. But Lisa, among many things, is a writer, right? So she's a writer, and if you follow her on Instagram, right, she writes about her writing in and of itself is serving, right? So she writes about all sorts of stuff. A lot of it's related to being a coach or coaching, and some of it isn't. It's like, if you like to write, that can be a great way to use social media in service to people, right? Because if you write stuff, if your writing is meant to serve, that can be great. I think it's important, you know, social media is very overused, and I think a lot of us can sound too coachy on social media. Like, you know, I joke with people, like, I do not need to see another quote from another coach. Not that quotes aren't useful, right? They can be super inspiring, but it's like, how many of us need to post another quote? And you got to pick and choose, right? So it's like, how am I going to, A, share something that helps people? B, if I share something, am I going to take the time to see who comments, who hit like? Because that is a connection. So if someone comments on something I post, that's somebody I can nurture, and I can immediately go into a private message with them and be like, Johnny, thank you so much for that comment. What made you write that? I want to ask one question of them, or what was helpful about that? Or you wrote that you see this in your own work. What are you noticing? I want to engage people through social media. I don't want to post and run. If I'm going to use social media effectively, I need to use it as a way to engage and connect, because it's obviously very much a one-way street if I post, but it's not a one-way street if I'm looking at comments and looking at likes and then connecting with those people. So that would be. And look, Johnny, you don't utilize social media a ton, and that has not even had remotely an impact on your practice.
No, I hardly use social media for my business, and I have gotten clients from posts that I've made on social media. So, you know, it can happen even if you're not that active. And, you know, one of the things I'm on LinkedIn. I don't post a lot on LinkedIn, and I get inundated with messages all the time of people saying, "Hey, I love what you're up to. Would love to connect," or "You're doing such amazing things in your business. How about we connect?" And it's completely disingenuous. Like there's no way that they looked at my profile. It's very canned, and if every uh, very very rarely I will get a message that is thoughtful and warm and interesting and in depth. It's very very rare, and the very few times it has happened, it has caught my attention, and I'm at least a little more interested. Whether or not I engage doesn't, I still rarely engage just because I'm just not that active on it. And it really opened a window in for me around, like, the vast majority of people are just blasting out as much as they can. They're focused entirely on how can I hit 1,000 people with a canned message and make it seem like I care when I don't really. And almost nobody is really slowing down to really connect with whoever they're engaging with, creating really thoughtful messages and sending it with intention. That almost never happens. And so, if you were to do that and slow down and really think about who you're connecting with, you can, like, some people have responded like, "This message was a breath of fresh air. Like, thank you so much for sending this invitation to a conversation, because it's exactly what I needed right now." So, like, that can occur. That kind of response is possible when we allow ourselves to slow down and really connect with people, no matter whether that's on social media or not.
That's right. And I just want to be a voice for, you don't ever have to use social media. Like, I think many coaches come into the profession, and even when they've been in it a while and they're starting to get traction, they feel like I should. There's like this thing of like, I should, right? I should be using social media. What's wrong with me? I'm not using social media. It's really fun. Like, there is absolutely no requirement. There's no requirement to ever write a word, and you can have a really successful coaching practice. There's no requirement to ever produce one video, and you can have a successful coaching practice. And I feel like it's really important to repeat that, because the nature of our work is so, if you're creating an individual coaching practice, amongst other things, that is intimate, that is one-on-one, that is not coming from social media. Even if, like Jonny, it wasn't lost on me, Jonny said, I created some clients from a social media post. But what occurred the moment Jonny posted that is somebody wrote back to him or said something to him that then he went and nurtured them and connected more, one-on-one, intimate. Yeah. So it's really important that we know, coming out from behind a post and connecting with people one-on-one who comment on our posts is where the work is. That's where relationship building occurs. That's where we start to find out what's going on in someone's world. And that can occur in an email, that can occur when I'm out in the world. Social media is fun if you like it. And if you don't like it, don't use it. It's really not required.
Just real quick, I want to acknowledge something's happened to your audio again. I'm pretty sure this is the exact same thing that happened last year. We can hear you, we can understand you, and something shifted. And if I remember last year, it resolved on its own within 10 or 15 minutes. So I just want to acknowledge that, because some people have commented on it, and it's fine because we can hear you just very clearly.
Is it just the sound changes? What occurs exactly? Do I sound like a rabbit?
Well, actually, I think it just resolved. So we're good.
All right.
To speak into it, and it just resolved on its own.
You're like magic.
That's what my in-laws call me, the tech wizard.
Oh my gosh, you are.
So Jan just commented, "Love the affirmation that I don't need to use social media. not my strength, much more of a one-to-one person.
Yep.
Absolutely. Me too.
Yeah. And I want members, so we're coming up, like we have 15 minutes left to serve you. So I want to highlight again that today's Facebook Live is all about like, what is your next medal? I want to highlight, what is your plan to get to that next medal, right? Does that equal you got to get more calls on your calendar? Does that equal you got to get out of your house and go connect with people? Like, we want you to establish between today and next week, we'll be back here on Wednesday again, same time. What are you going to do to create another win for yourself, right? And it might be, I'm going to practice professionalism in my emails. If you have never, I'm guessing most of you have, but if you haven't, by chance, ever heard Steve Chandler's audio, Professional Self versus Social Self, if you haven't heard it and you want it, message me or Johnny. You can message us on Facebook because now you're in our worlds, and we will send it to you. Because that, to me, is one of the best audios to start to highlight, how do I go from social self to professional self? What does that look like? And if you have questions around that, right? If you have questions around what your plan could look like, gosh, Carolyn, today was useful, but I'm still planless. Like, you know, Olympic athletes don't get to where they are without plans to execute, right? And one of the most interesting things I heard in a clip, you know, I, like many people, all of a sudden women's rugby became part of my life, right? Rugby 7, I had no idea what that was. And all of a sudden now it's like, I wish I'd been a rugby player. I'm like, could I still be a rugby player? Maybe not. However, one of the most interesting video clips I saw is this woman who's now become, you know, much more known. Her name is Alona Mar. And Alona, they interviewed her after the game where they won bronze. So the US won bronze. And one of the things when I talked to Steve Chandler about the theme for today, he said, I thought this was really interesting. He goes, yeah, and I think it's important for people to know those people are excited about bronze. When someone wins a bronze, they're like, oh, it's not gold. They're like, I got bronze. That's amazing. So we really, you know, we want you to celebrate whatever medal you're going for and all the medals you've already achieved. Don't diminish those. Those matter. But one of the things Alona Mar said, which I loved, is she said, one of the things that helped us, that we always focus on, she's one of the team captains, is she said, we all agree, you can be afraid, we can make mistakes, but we're just going to take action. We're going to keep taking action on the field, that we're not going to stop taking action. We can be afraid, we can be nervous, we can mess up, but we're going to be in action mode. That's what this profession requires, lots and lots of action. So as we're heading towards the final 10 minutes, like, you want to share your plan, like, put it in the comments, right? Like, if you're like, here's, like, use these people that have joined us to help you be accountable for something. What are you seeing, Johnny?
In the chat. So Ryan just said, I noticed myself hesitating to invite people into conversations when connecting, unless there is an obvious issue or challenge they bring up. But it can be tricky to not fall into listening for that specifically and bringing more grabby energy. Are there any recommendations?
Yes. So Ryan, one of the things I want to say is there's a validity to not inviting too soon. So there's a validity to not inviting too soon. It's one of the things we talk about in the school a lot. Like, sometimes coaches are so quick to invite into conversation, not that there always has to be like something they specifically are challenged by, but we don't want to rush. So it's okay to be like, we can nurture and serve someone via email or messenger. That can be a slow and gentle process. So Ryan, I want you to practice trusting that maybe it's not time yet to invite some of these people into a conversation, right? Because that's where we can look grabby. We can be like, why is this person doing this? Like, why are they inviting me? Like, we haven't established anything yet. And while no one is ever going to respond that way, like most humans don't go, why? There's nothing here to invite me for. We can feel when someone's grabbing. We can feel it, even if we can't name it. So Ryan, I really want you to trust your instincts that practicing slowing down, and maybe I sent back one email with one question, like just one interesting question, like, or what was that like for you, or like whatever, like one question, not 7 questions, not even 3 questions, right? Many of us pepper people with questions, and that does not feel good. I don't want to be peppered with questions, and I do this for a living. So you want to be sensitive to the pace at which we build relationships, right? We're not on Love Island. This does not need to happen fast, right? We want to be really sensitive to the pace of building a relationship and nurturing a relationship. We are in a relationship building business. So Ryan, you can let us know if that's helpful.
And what I might add to that is, you know, as a step before inviting, or multiple steps before inviting, you could always offer a resource. You know, like you're in conversation with someone, and something interesting comes up, or you hear a topic, and instead of inviting them to a conversation, you can say something like, you know, I have something like an audio, or that might be helpful, that I've found for me has been really helpful in clients I work with. You know, would you be interested in me sending it to you, or an article, or I just read this article on XYZ, you know, if you're open, happy to send you the link. That can be an earlier, easier step that doesn't feel grabby and is more around serving and providing value. So that's another thing you can attend or practice, so that you get more comfortable just taking an extra step, instead of just feeling like you're just nervous the whole time.
Right. And, you know, we talk about this a lot, like our job is to become a trusted source of transformation, right? That's our job. And trusted sources of transformation, what's the first word in there? Trust, right? And trust is something that we build and we grow with someone. We don't, you know, trust doesn't get established in an instant. It's built, right? So I might send one thing, what Jonny said to someone, and that trust might go up because they were like, wow, that was super useful. That's like exactly the thing I'm dealing with at work. Thank you so much, right? So the conversation in some ways is better once more trust is established. In fact, it's always better. So I do want to say that, right? So anybody else, Jonny, talk about what they're going to go for in terms of meddling between now and next week?
Yeah, Richard just said my next medal is to identify the next person that I can serve. Just that. Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That is perfect. And like, what I so appreciate about that, Richard, is like, it's really the only thing we can do, right? If we really can only do one thing at a time, which is the truth, we can only serve one person at a time, right? Even if I'm gonna email 3 people today, I still have to do it one at a time, right? And me really thinking about that person, being thoughtful about that person, not rushing, can be one of the most powerful things we can do. One of the most powerful things we can do. Jonny, what's on your mind in terms of your own medals? Like, what did this whole, like you and I even talking about this? I'm just so curious.
So I was thinking about this. So recent medals for me, one was continuing to make over 200K after the birth of my daughter, and having a toddler and a newborn at home, and working, you know, 30 to 35 hours a week. Like, that was a big medal for me in keeping my business running and afloat and significant, and not being at full capacity, like in terms of my energy and time. that was a big recent medal for me. And then a medal that I'm working on is breaking the 300 barrier. So that's the direction I'm heading.
That's awesome. And to me, are you excited about that medal?
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I say that, and I say this to all of you, right? Whatever your next medal is, you want to be excited about it. You want to have enthusiasm for the medal you're engaged in, right? And often as coaches, we can be like, oh, I just want to get to 10 clients, then I'll be excited. Then I'll be enthusiastic, right? And I want to be a voice we want to, like, wherever you are, get excited and enthusiastic about the medal you're up to, right? Because that's how we grow. Like, jumping and skipping steps, as appealing as it can look from the outside, is actually not necessarily in service to our growth. So you really want to get like, wow, like, I'm in an important place in my growth as a coach. I'm in an important place in my growth as a business owner. And I want to really be willing to meet myself there and be like, I want to stay present to what medal I'm up to, right? Like, you didn't hear any Olympic athlete when they were being interviewed after they got bronze, like, if only, I just can't wait to get to the silver. Like, just give me the silver. That's what I'm really interested in the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. This, it's over. Like, come on, let's get moving, right? Not one. So we are going to leave you with that. So one thing we want you to know. So next Wednesday, same time, same place, we will have a different theme, and we will share that at some point very soon. And if you have questions, if you're like, hey, you said something, if you watch the replay and you're like, I have a question, message me, message Jonny. Like, we want to serve you during this time as we're all in the wild, wild west of Facebook Lives together. If there's something you want to hear about in an upcoming live, you're like, hey, Carolyn, can you spend some time talking about this? Whether that's groups, whether that's fees, whether that's whatever it is. If you're like, I would love to hear more about that, message us. If you have our emails, write to us and be like, I would love to hear more about this. Our goal is that in and of themselves, these 4 Facebook Lives are of service, right? The most fun thing would be in 3 weeks to hear, 10 or 20 of you go, I got to my next medal. This was fantastic, right? So, like, we want you to be aware, like, we're here to serve you. Is there anything you want to say, Jonny, to be complete?
I just to add that if you want to hear the professional versus social self audio, to also email us, excuse me, because to me, that was a game changer. Making the jump from part-time social self coach to professional coach, for me, made a huge difference in my professional self-esteem, in my ability to enroll. It was a huge difference, and that audio is like serves as the foundation of that as a context. So
it's great. And I want to say one other thing as we complete. Wherever you are, it's totally like, because sometimes coaches think, oh, well, I feel so insecure and I feel so anxious about this whole thing. We can still do a great job, even as we're anxious and uncomfortable. Like Jonny is a great example of someone who, to me, initially had lots of insecure thinking and lots of ways and it didn't stop him from getting out there and serving. It didn't stop him from making a difference for people. So I want to be clear that in this profession, you don't need to handle everything in order to create clients. You don't need to handle everything to create a thriving, financially strong business. I mean, I was insecure for at least a full 5 years here and there, like over and over, different insecurities. Sometimes I'm still insecure. That is part of human nature. And we don't have to handle everything to be of service in the world. So I want to leave you with that. I wanted to say to you, I acknowledge you. I saw someone else had a gold medal. And we're here for you. So it's going to be super fun. thanks for sticking with us with our audio, with all the things that come up on our lovely Facebook Lives. And we will see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.